Stories of an Aircraft Builder. Even while the work on my first replica was still in progress, the research naturally continued, and there was an extensive exchange of letters with many experts. It doesn't make much sense to show the individual letters here, but a great deal of effort was involved. Younger people in particular can no longer imagine it. A letter had to be written and sent on paper. Airmail was expensive, and so most of my letters were still sent by ship. Back then, it took between 4 to 6 weeks for a letter to arrive in America, for example. Then it was normal for 1 or 2 weeks to pass before the requested documents could be copied and packed, or until the recipient had the opportunity to sit down and write a letter in reply. Another 4 to 6 weeks until the letter finally arrived. Not like today, 2 mouse clicks and the matter is whizzing around the globe in a matter of seconds. It was all very exciting, and there are still around 10 folders full of letters from me and their replies from that time. It was actually totally crazy. The exchange was also conducted in public in specialized journals at the time, mainly of course in Leonard Opdyke's outstanding magazine World War I Aero. The magazine was the organ of an eponymous association of historians, researchers, authors, aircraft builders, etc., who dealt with all kinds of topics relating to early aviation. All the greats were represented there: Alex Imrie, Peter Cross, Paul Lehman, Roy Meyers, and also Charlie Bourget. Charlie was one of the first to seriously try to find out what the triplane really looked like in the 60s and 70s of the last century. There were also Walter Redfern and Ron Sands who did drawings for the triplane, but they were quite liberal with the design details, whereas Ron Sands came pretty close. I was also in contact with Ron at the time, and he told me quite clearly in a letter that his intention was never the historically correct reconstruction of the triplane. He took the readily available sources and with his drawings wanted to give the average American the opportunity to build an airplane at the kitchen table that came as close as possible to the 1917 triplane. Those were his words, not mine, but they hit the nail on the head. He knew what he was talking about. And finally, the replica of the Fokker historian Mr. P. Alting, who worked according to his plans, was the trigger for wanting to set the record straight as best as I could from the very beginning of my research. It simply could not be that such drawings were described by the Fokker historian himself as the ultimate, when they obviously do not show what was done in 1917. Even today, many still believe that the triplane looked as Ron drew it. Charlie Bourget drew up the first sketches based on his research and was also interested in producing a proper set of drawings. Unfortunately, this never happened, and Charlie hasn't been here for a long time. He wrote numerous letters back and forth with me, and I was particularly pleased that he brought his opinion in professional circles. He wrote a review and evaluation of my work in issue number 136 of the journal, which appeared in May 1992. After that I received even more mail and even more discussion material, as well as more and more source material. Here is Charlie's article as it was published at the time. World War I Aero magazine number 136 of May 1992. Fokker DR1. Achim Engels, Silberhalde 12, 7060 Schorndorf, Germany, has completed some 50 of what will be a full set of drawings for the Fokker DR1. We have described them in previous issues. Here is a review of the set so far by Charles Bourget, whose work has appeared still earlier in these pages, plus a comment by Achim, plus another by your editor, plus photos of his nearly finished repro, to be installed eventually in the Museum für Technik at Speyer, where Pfalz used to be, plus part of one of his drawings. A serious project. Fokker DR1 drawings by Achim Engels, by Charlie Bourget. It always amazes me how the quality of research on various World War I airplanes keeps getting better with time. The work done by Achim Engels on the Fokker DR-1 is no exception. This aircraft has always fascinated me, and I've been collecting information since 1965 with an eye toward doing a set of drawings someday. So far my efforts have produced a centerline drawing that is the necessary foundation for subsequent work. Not much source material has emerged over the years, so reconstruction has to be done based on early flight magazine articles and some German airboard drawings, as well as the only surviving factory drawings on the Fokker DR-1, the wing assemblies. Stockton R. Ferris Jr. did a drawing in 1934 for Model Airplane News that was obviously based on the flight articles. This was followed in 1952 by very detailed drawings by Joseph Nito, again in Model Airplane News, and also based on the flight material. I would say the serious studies of this airplane began with work by Peter R. Jarrett of Australia, George H. Ballinger of Bristol, England, Peter M. Gross of Princeton, New Jersey, and Charles R. Cash Jr. of Memphis, Tennessee, as well as some dimensional studies I did. This happened during the 1960s and 70s. More recently, others have done some good work, and I expect the book that Paul Lehman has been working on will be the definite work on the subject and will hopefully pull together a lot of research on the dimensional and structural details of the aircraft. A lot of other people have helped to sort out the DR-1, and I apologize for not mentioning them here. The recent efforts by Achim Sven Engels have gone a long way towards detailing the Fokker DR-1. I am glad to see that the art of drafting is still alive and he is not using a CAD computer to sterilize the process. He is running into the usual problems that arise when you get down to the details of fittings and other small parts. Nobody knows for sure what some of this stuff actually looked like, so you end up designing it based on other Fokker aircraft of the period, which is about all you can do. This process can be very frustrating because you end up redoing most of your work several times as you become aware of new information and make corrections. After a while, you become so familiar with the geometry of the aircraft that you can pick up a lot of details from photographs that would often refute your past thinking. It is an interesting mental process, wherein you can filter out a lot of data if you are not careful. Often, if your latest piece of information is true, all your drawings have to change. My first reaction is to prove the new information wrong at all costs rather than to evaluate the find objectively. Eventually logic cuts in and you do what you have to do, which is usually a lot of work. This is why I finally said stop and concentrated on defining the basic centerline dimensions of the DR-1. Figured that if I could get this right, then I could go off and work on various details with some degree of confidence that I wouldn't be facing a lot of changes. I published my first layout in 1976 and I got a lot of feedback which caused me to rethink several areas. I produced a revised profile in side view, which I think is still about as good as anything I have seen. At the time, I claimed an accuracy of plus or minus 5 mm, about a quarter of an inch, as an absolute worst case, with most dimensions being considerably more accurate. The shape of the rudder has always been a subject of controversy, and I can only refer researchers to photographs to see how varied the shape is between individual aircraft. I cannot overemphasize the importance of photographs. For instance, the wing rib spacing of the upper wing at the center section varies, so that the ribs next to the cabane struts are outboard. If they were inboard of the cabane strut, then you would have a nice uniform spacing of 310 mm over the entire span. I suspect this was the original plan, and then it was found that having the ribs shifted to the outboard sides of the cabane fittings was more convenient. In this case they didn't interfere with the aileron pulley brackets. All this can be seen from photographs. The rear view of the Stapenhorst DR-1 is particularly clear in this point. Engels's wing drawing showed a logical uniform spacing and needs to be revised. Another point is the engine cowling when viewed in profile. Most drawings show the large corner radius as being tangent with the faceplate of the cowling. In fact, this corner radius meets the faceplate at an obtuse angle, and a small blend radius is used to fair the junction. Again, photographs tell the story, even though a certain amount of eyeballing is required. In summary, the Engels drawings provide a pretty comprehensive study of the details of the DR-1. Engels needs to gather together as many photos of the Fokker DR-1 as possible to keep from getting misled by some of the drawings done over the years. Achim responds: I have corrected the part of my drawings which he mentioned to be wrong. The wing structure. The rib next to the center section cabane strut was really tacked to the spar outside of the cabane fittings. This can also be clearly seen on a drawing made by the Flugzeugfestigkeitsprüfstelle by Mr. Koch, dated December 17. The editor responds: It has been interesting to watch Achim work out the details of this set. As he notes, he has made some changes along the way. A problem as yet unsolved. Do the top longerons aft of the cockpit slope down to the stabilizer leading edge? Some photos seem to indicate they do, others equally clearly show them straight as a die. Charlie Bourget thinks they break at the back of the cockpit and slope down perhaps 25 mm to the tailplane. If so, an odd construction. And now a final note by me again, a few years later. For those interested, we have in the meantime figured out why the top longerons of the Fokker DR-1 fuselage do indeed slope down and set the rudder a bit deeper by about 30 mm. There is an aerodynamic reason for that, and if you're interested in finding out why, I would suggest to go and read my book, Treatise on the Aerodynamics of the Fokker Triplane, to find out why.